It is May and there is lots of things already growing here on our plot. This time of year we are really busy with our sowings and our growing here on our allotment. So I thought today I would show you exactly what is going on our plot today. We have 2 largish polytunnels, we have 2 greenhouses and many no-dig beds. In these no-dig beds and polytunnels and greenhouses this year, we are growing a variety of different things. Some of them we have grown over and over again for many, many years, and some things that actually we've never attempted to grow before. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to show you the good, the bad, and hopefully not so much the ugly of all what's going on our plot. Now we're going to start from the top half and we're going to zigzag down because it is quite a large area to show you as I'm scooting around. In this area here we've managed to find some old archway from somebody that had been getting rid of it. We've covered it with our chicken wire and this is where our butternut squash, if it germinates, because to be honest I'm having a really hard time germinating my butternut squashes. Every other squash that we've grown, which is another 4 or 5 different varieties, growing really well, germinated very easily. But our butternut squashes, that's a whole different ball game. They'll be coming in to grow up and over this arch. But we've also got some of our spare tomatoes. We always grow excess tomatoes each year and we try and keep a few to grow outdoors. Now we're not doing a massive big long bed like I did last year because of the amount of things I would like to try and grow this year. But we have got 5 or so in each of these smaller beds to grow for our outdoor tomatoes, which unfortunately in the UK can be real hit and miss, all depending on the weather. And here is some of our potatoes that we are growing in pots. Now, again, I've done a previous video on all the different potato ways that we are growing this year, or the different mediums that we are using to grow our potatoes. Some of these with a leaf mulch, some with a straw mulch, and some with none at all. Now, these have been hit by frost a couple of times because it has, in fact, been a little bit cold at times. But they are really, really picking up. Now this here is something we have not grown before, and this is horseradish. Now a lot of people do not grow this in the ground simply because of how much it spreads. Now this tub isn't the biggest of tubs, and next year we are actually going to be growing it in a larger plastic bin, just so it's got a bit more depth for its roots. But this is doing incredibly well and I can't wait to actually harvest some of my first lot of horseradish. Now this is our brassica cage, well, one of them anyway. We do use nets in other places for some of our brassicas. Very simple design, using recycled materials, old trampoline parts, and even the odd tent pole. Now, down the one row we have some purple sprouting broccoli. That's pretty much taking up most of this space. It is something that we really look forward to harvesting every year. So as soon as we've actually harvested the last of our purple sprouting broccoli, it pretty much goes back into the ground again. We've also got some different varieties of red cabbages, and I've got some kale down the middle. But this year I've also got some Japanese greens as well. Now in here I have got an awful lot of weeds, and I do need to come in here and actually remove the rest of these weeds. We used a heavy undecomposed grass mulch on top of this bed this year, and unfortunately there's a lot of weed seeds in it. But the bed needed feeding, it's what we had, and there was no way I was going to be spending money on this area. Now this Japanese greens I've never grown before, and I'm really interested to see how well this actually does. Now you can harvest it at this size, or you can wait till it gets a little bit bigger. And in fact, I think you can even eat the flower stems. So I'm quite looking forward to tasting that. This is my spring greens, and it's the least affected by any insect damage at all. And we found that last year. Spring greens, collard greens, things like that seem to do really well against any pest damage. And it's one of the cabbages that we grew last year that we had really, really good success with. So fingers crossed this year, this will be the same. Now with these spring greens, you can sow them throughout pretty much most of the year apparently. So before I even harvest these, I will actually start growing some more in modules from seed, just so I've got something to replace for the winter months and hopefully into the very early months for next year. So this is one of our fruiting areas, and it's on the top bit of the allotment. This is a josterberry that we planted, I think it was late last year, and this year it's already showing signs of some beautiful fruit. Now I'm really quite excited about this to see how well this actually grows. But I am going to have to trim it and train it a little bit. Otherwise I think it's going to take over this space very, very easily. Along this line I've also got some red currant bushes here and here, because I find the red currants I can use a lot more in my cooking than some of the larger black currant bushes that I've got down towards the bottom. This bed isn't a no-dig bed, but it has got a straw mulch on top. This has really, really helped us this year with keeping the moisture levels in the ground and reducing a lot of the weeds. Now down this row, it had been lightly dug last year, and then I've covered it with straw. Again, technically not a no-dig bed, but there's some areas where the straw is very thin and started to already rot away, that the weeds are really starting to poke through. But in this bed later on, I'll be planting a couple of my giant squashes. Should have enough room to kind of go along, and it's roughly where I grew the very big giant squash that I grew last year. But fingers crossed that this year, I'm hoping for a much, much bigger pumpkin. Now in this row as well, we've got our different raspberries. We have got summer fruiting here that I've actually took cuttings from our back garden when I removed the raspberries a couple of years ago. And these have really, really picked up. We've got our autumn variety here, which were all cut down in beginning of winter. And these are actually really starting to pile on with lots and lots of flowers. And then at this end, we have got again, the summer fruiting raspberries, if you can see me through the josterberry. This whole area here, this is where we normally grow majority of our squashes. And as you can see, again, I've gone for the straw mulch. Now I've found in the areas that I've already planted in that this straw mulch really has helped keep that water moisture levels in, and it has dramatically reduced the amount of weed spread. But if you're incredibly fussy about what's going on your plot, you will get this if you use straw. This is old wheat seed or whatever the straw is from, but they are so easy to pull up. In fact, much easier than majority of the weeds that you get on your allotment. So even though I have got these sprouting up here and there, they stick out like a sore thumb, and it makes it very, very easy to remove by just a little tug. And of course, this is great for the compost bin. But this whole area, I do need to actually get in and weed. We have got a mare's tail infestation here this year. It has really, really started to spread. The bindweed's really picked up this year too. And where I haven't got the straw, in the slightly more bare areas where it's just clay soil, the annual weeds have really, really come on. I have got some mange too though, actually growing in different areas here, and I've actually got my sunflowers growing too. But I have some giant sunflowers I really wanted to give a head start. on the other side of the plot we have our strawberry bed, which is up against the first polytunnel. They have done exceptionally well this year, and I've really got high hopes for a really good harvest. But we do have it going into this bed as well, which is at the back of the polytunnel, because who doesn't love a really good well-grown strawberry? Now, I thought I would show you the very first polytunnel that we built here. This is our recycled trampoline pallet polytunnel. In here, we've had this for a couple of years now, and we've had some fantastic crops as we've gone along. This year, we thought we would try something different. Through the winter months, we actually planted some garlic in here. Now, if you're anything like us, we have been stricken very, very badly here over the years with allium leaf miner. So we thought we would give it a go growing it under cover. I don't like having nets over them. I don't like having a whole netted allotment, even though really this is probably a necessity. But these are doing really well. And in fact, some of these are actually already ready to harvest. Now, it's very early. Normally you won't start harvesting your garlic until about June, but we're going to test and see if any of this garlic is actually ready to harvest. It is starting to die back in places, and it is starting to yellow off. Now, there is no major signs of rusts, but one or two of these may be actually ready. They are starting to die back somewhat. In here as well, we have our tomatoes, and we also have some of our chilies. We've placed all our tomatoes around the outside because they get so incredibly tall, and then our chilies on the inner side. Now, we do use strings in our polytunnel. We find it much, much easier to grow our tomatoes up strings. This helps with the airflow and helps keeps things a little bit tidier because it isn't the widest of polytunnels. If this garlic harvest does really well, I think we may actually try and grow garlic in the larger polytunnel through the winter of this year. Now, on the other side we have this. This is self-seeded coriander, just one of the small patches that we have. Last year we let our coriander go to seed, the stuff that we didn't use, because it is an excellent flower for pollinators. But this is what happens when you let your coriander go to seed. But to be honest, it is so much healthier than anything I've attempted to grow. A bit further along on that bed, you can see I've had some pak choi that I actually didn't cover, and it has actually been quite decimated by the local pigeons. So I built this. This is a small hoop net. Just some old water pipe and some old scaffolding netting. But my pak choi is growing very happy in there. I've also got some other red cabbages and, as you can see, an awful lot of comfrey. Now, next to that bed I have got the big bean trellis. Now, this is much taller than we've used in previous years. So we are growing plenty of growing beans this year, and this is why we've used such a high trellis. We found every time I've grown them up teepees, no matter how strong I make it, the wind here the last couple of years have always broke my bean canes. So we've just added onto this to make it a bit stronger. Unfortunately, my husband's a little bit taller than me, and any harvest after a certain height he'll have to deal with. Now, this is one of my larger beds, and as you can see, I've got another mat of coriander. Again, this is all self-seeded. This was actually starting to grow early December, and now the weather's warmed up a bit. It really has picked up. I've got a little bit of fennel, and I've got some beetroots in here this year, maybe a rogue potato or two. But along the edges, I've also got some cabbages, which are starting to be overtaken by the rhubarb. Now, I'm finding my rhubarb a little bit hit and miss at the moment. The ants are really loving this rhubarb. The amount of sap that's leaking from it, they really are drawn to it, and they are damaging a lot of the stems. This one has been eaten a little bit too much and it's not worth me keeping, so it will go onto the compost pile. I'm also finding an awful lot of bindweeds as well, and I'm trying to take them up as much as possible of the root. Because of how soft this ground is, most of the time the roots come up with ease, but these really are a giant pain in the backside. Now don't get me wrong, bindweed was really, really bad when we first took on this plot, and we haven't eradicated it in 3 years, but it is definitely getting easier to deal with, and it comes up pretty much with a full root because of how we are dealing with our soil with a no-dig method. But it's an ongoing process, and eventually, hopefully, we may be bindweed free, but I doubt it, because a lot of this bindweed this year is actually coming in from next door allotments who aren't maintaining the area where they're growing. Now this is the chard that I actually left in from last year. I didn't fully harvest, and some of it is actually looking rather tasty. Now it has started to bolt. I have started removing some of the flowers, but it's nothing that the chickens don't actually really enjoy eating. This is my sorrel that I planted last year, and it has really thrived in this location. And I've also got another patch here. My Welsh onions that are going to flower. Now Welsh onions I've never really grown before, but I wanted to try something that I could try and grow outside because of the allium leaf miner. Now it has been attacked, but actually not that bad. But these are really beautiful. Now I've never really grown Welsh onions before, but apparently it's very similar to a spring onion. Now I've got some coriander seedling there. It might be a bit of parsley, so I'm just going to roughly bury that again. Now, I've never tried the Welsh onion. I think it's more like a spring onion than anything else. And if I was using these to eat properly, I probably wouldn't have let it go to have scapes. But it smells beautiful. Now I've got a load of these already growing in a module tray for me to grow in multiple different places. And it's really nice to see that I haven't actually got any allium leaf miner damage. Well, not much anyway. There's a few little pecks here and there. But I wanted to test to see if we were going to have major issues with allium leaf miner. I don't think I'm going to risk growing much else outside. But this, I'm glad I grew some more from seed. Now this is the other polytunnel. Again, it's another trampoline pallet build. And we built this last year, and we had some great harvests from here last year. From our chilies to our melons to our gherkins and a few other little bits and pieces. Now these chilies have been in here for several days now, almost over a week I do think it is. Now they have been through the run of the mill. The temperatures have dropped down to 0 degrees in here, and I have been fleecing them up through the coldest of nights. But they will pick up, they will keep growing. It just may set them back a little bit. Now these in here are doing okay. They are stress flowering though, and I think I will carry on, keep removing those flowers for a little bit longer yet. Now they are yellowing slightly due to the stresses, and I do think they could do with probably a really good feed. This compost, even though it looks very rough, is some of our own mulch. And when you dig down just an inch below the surface, there's some really fantastic growing compost underneath that has slowly rotted down over the last year. Fingers crossed that these do a really good harvest. I would love to grow chilies in pots, but it's an awful large expense, and then it's the watering as well. We have no power here, and I don't really want to do solar panels and things because, trust me, here it will get stolen. So for now, this is how we're going to be growing. Now this polytunnel is much larger than the other polytunnel. It's as big as what we can go on our actual allotment. 2 lots of beds down here, one slightly narrower than the one on the right. And I've also got my straw bales in here as well, well, one of them where I'll be growing some sweet potatoes. Not done loads of straw bale gardening over the years. I've done it once or twice in the previous years at home, and I had a really good crop. This is where my melons are growing, and we always grow our melons up strings because it makes life so much easier. We've got okra, we've got gherkins, we've got Cape gooseberries, obviously we've got the chilies and a whole range of other things that are going to be growing in this polytunnel this season. Next one along, we've got the bed, which we do keep covered in plastic a little bit because we only really grow squashes for a certain part of the year. It is something that I will be growing in throughout the whole of the year, but probably not for this year. Then we've got our broad beans, which again we have covered with a straw mulch, and that compost is absolutely beautiful just below the straw surface. Edged along with some more lettuces, and then we have got a row of compost, which is where I've planted my parsnip seeds. Next bed is our pea bed, and actually this bed is actually wider than what it looks. Again, I've covered it with straw, so it gives me more places to plant random things. Next one along is this. Well, this will be our asparagus bed, but I've tried to grow asparagus from seed this year, and I have had the worst germination rates I think I've had for anything that I've tried to grow before by seed. I have got 1 or 2 plants, so hopefully next year we can use half of this bed for our asparagus. Now this bed is where we grow our Jerusalem artichokes. Now I wasn't going to grow any more Jerusalem artichokes this year. I was going to turn the bed into something else. You can actually see some of the Jerusalem artichokes regrowing, and this is what you will find if you grow Jerusalem artichokes. They will regrow if you leave any in the ground. But I want to remove some of these because I have got a different crop that I'd like to try to grow in this bed here. Now the lemon balm and mint herb pots are doing so well. And this is the other currant bushes that we've actually got growing down here. Some of the potatoes that we've grown, that we grew in sacks. Some we grew in pots, some we grew in sacks, and some are definitely doing better than others. Now these are my blueberry bushes, and they have really picked up this year. Now my cranberry bush, which we bought last year, has really put on some growth. And even the smaller few stems of blueberries that I had have really started to pick up this year. Now this here is a honeyberry bush, very similar to a blueberry, but apparently it grows much easier and in any soil. Now you do need 2, and I've only been able to get 1 so far, so I'm on the hunt for another honeyberry bush. Now we're going to move on to our smaller greenhouse. And in here I have different melons, some loofahs. I've got a little bit of lemongrass in this pot just there. I've got my corn starting to grow. Lots and lots of different types of melons because I know how much the slugs love to eat these once you've got them planted. Some more Cape gooseberries, because I'm pants at growing Cape gooseberries. Livingston daisies. Lupins, some rudbeckias. And these here are some of my squash plants. Now, to be honest, this greenhouse is quite cramped because we are storing some random stuff in here. But these have been down here for several days now and they are doing quite well. Now, again, I don't normally start my melons till about now. But after reading a little bit more on it, I thought I would take the risk this year. And so far, it has pulled off. Now the thing is with melons, chilies, things like that, they need a much longer growing time than the average UK weather can actually do. So there's definitely certain things that you need to start off earlier. Simply because it just takes a while for that fruit to ripen. But so far it has paid off, and yes, I have got an awful lot here, and in fact I have got some more at home as well. The thing is, anything soft like this, the slugs really, really love. So I always grow a lot more than what I actually need. And I have actually still got some of my squash plants at home, plus my sweet potatoes, plus a few other random stuff as well. They'll be coming down here over the next few days, but I am really, really struggling to get my butternut squashes to germinate. Now, everything else that I've grown, so this is one of my urticaries, all of them have grown into healthy specimens. But my butternut squashes, I can't even get to germinate. Last year was exactly the same, and in fact we tried a different variety of butternut squashes, thinking it may be because of that variety. And we struggled last year with our butternut squashes as well, where in previous years we've never had an issue with our butternut squashes. When we finally did get them to germinate, which was about 3 weeks after everything else, they really did fail to thrive, especially last year. The year before, yes, we got butternut squashes, but the year previous to that was our much, much better year for our harvesting of our butternut squashes. Now we're on to our second greenhouse. Now this is the larger greenhouse. This is the one that I built late last year and erected in this area. The two raised beds that I've got some of the chili plants in that I transferred into here are doing really well, and in fact they're doing better in here than inside that polytunnel. So it'll be interesting to see which is the best harvest. But in here I've got majority of my seedlings. Now there's a lot of beans that I sowed probably about 4 or 5 days ago, and they have already started to grow very, very well. Now growing beans at this time of year, again, it's a bit of a risk. They do not like the cold temperatures, and a frost can really kill them. But I think that's the last of any frost risk for us anyway, over the next coming weeks anyway. So I took the risk and I sowed these a little bit earlier than I would do normally. So this is my violet bean, my home sowed Bellotti beans, my lettuces that I've pricked out or started to prick out. I have got a lot more. Rocket, basil seeds are just starting to come through. These are the watermelons that are actually looking healthier out here than when I grew them in the house. Amaranth, quinoa, mamba beans, which have not come up just yet, oregano and scarlet sage. The scarlet sage was sown a little bit later and it's only just starting to pop up. In fact, it probably needs a bit of a water. These are my salvias that I do need to get out or put into bigger pots. Celeriac. Now this is something that I've not grown before, and this is okra. I can't stand okra, it's not my favourite vegetable at all, but the husband really does enjoy it. And I'm pretty sure I've got some friends and family I can give fresh okra to. This will be going into the larger polytunnel. This is the cucumber. This is just a standard market moor for outdoor growing. I've got some trombone squashes there. That's something that we haven't tried to grow before. I'm quite looking forward to that. We have got gherkins in the background. Love a good gherkin. And obviously we've got nasturtiums coming up next. Now these are a noir bean. These are the bush beans. This is something I really wanted to try to grow this year. It's a bit like a pinto bean used for drying. Because again, it's something that can last all year. But I've just noticed I've got some red spider mite. Now these are yin yang beans, the most beautiful beans. I really, really do enjoy the coloration. Again, it's a drying bean, can be used, eaten as a small young pod, but its main use is to dry and to store for long-term use. Now I've got a couple of different trays of these, and I think I'm going to sow a few more so we can get some slightly later cropping. But what I find with bush beans or anything that has to be dried, the earlier I can get them in and grown, the better. Now the next one was the yellow French bean. Now this is another, I think this was another dwarf variety. It was some old seed, and so far I've got one spindly one growing out of these yellow French beans. Good old Isabella, which is a taller variety. And again, this was some of the shop bought ballotted beans. Again, it's another one to dry.